Welcome back, Year 8. Here we are again for another round of mathematics for week 1. So this lesson is about histograms. And the obvious question to ask then is, what on earth is a histogram? Well, essentially, it's what I would have called a column graph. So histograms are column graphs. If both of them aren't so exciting to you, a column graph is one of these things where, well, you have columns in it. Right? Columns, things that go up like buildings. They look like buildings, very close together. They're column graphs, which are histograms. Today, we're doing histograms, these things. Right, so I'm going to jump straight into actually making a histogram. First thing you need is a ruler, right? You need a ruler. Do not do this by hand. If I was there, I'd be lecturing each and every one of you. Use your ruler. Ruler. Now, once we've got that out of the way, let's use our ruler to actually draw something. So, we're going to have a horizontal axis. I should have got a smaller ruler. Ah, the regret. All right. So, there's going to be a line there somewhere. There's going to be a line here somewhere. But we need to work out what sort of values we're going to put on it. Now, when you're doing a frequency table into a graph like this, frequency is always the dependent value. It's always frequency going up. All right. So I may even write that in first, but look, what do our frequencies go from and to anyway? So the smallest frequency is 1, the highest is 6. So we only need to represent numbers between 0 and 6 on here. So, you know, if you were doing that in your notebooks, it might be every 2 centimetres on your ruler, every 3 centimetres, maybe every 1 if you wanted to do a very small graph. But you need to measure out how far you're going to go for each data value. Now, in my case, I'm going to do them every 4 centimetres because that means at 24 centimetres, I'll hit 6, which is as far as I need to go. Again, you're probably going to use 1 or 2 or 3 centimetres for each marker there. And then we can label it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and yes, I let it go up to 7 there, even though we don't have any value at 7. On the bottom here, we need our categories. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories there. So you need to leave enough space, maybe 2 centimetres a category if you're doing this in your notebook. In my case, it's going to be a bit more because I've got this big, well, not that big board to do it on. I'm going to do markers every 4 centimetres on here because I need to take up the space. And then I'm going to put the title 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 34. Right? Remember your theory. These are your independent, that's your independent variables, your x-axis, that's your dependent variables, your y-axis. This depends on this, right? The number of scores depends on what the score was. The score doesn't depend on the number of times it occurred, all right? So this depends on this. That's how we always set up graphs in maths and science. Failing that, just always put the frequency on this side, okay? All right, so there are a couple of important elements of graphs that are missing at the moment. The most obvious one is I haven't put the columns in yet. I haven't actually put the data in, but there's more. Labels, right? We need a title. So I'll put a title up here. And we need labels on the axes. So these are the actual scores and, well, which are measured in points. And On this axis, it's the frequency. So we'd write frequency. Easy marks remembering that sort of stuff in maths tests, remembering both your axis labels and your titles. So then, and again using our ruler, we will draw in the data. So in the 0 to 4 area here, there were 3 values, so I've drawn it up to 3. In the 5 to 9, there were only 2 values. So I draw a line at 2. In the 10 to 14 range, there were 4 values, so it's going to be up higher. Up to 4. All right, 15 to 19, there's 6. Going to take it up to 6. So that's the highest we're actually going to have in this one. 6. And in the 20 to 24 range, we have 5. So a line across from 5. And down. In the 25 to 29 category, we have 4. So we'll do a line across from 4. And down. And in the 30 to 34 category, there's only 1. We'll do a line across from 1. And that's it. We have a beautiful histogram. Now, in your book and in the questions, you may be asked all sorts of things from here. You need to be able to read off the graph to make sense of it. For example, if I asked you how many scores were less than 10, less than 10 scores means this bit and this bit, right? Because 10 starts at this one here. Less than 10 means these. So the number of scores that were less than 10 will be that plus that, 3 plus 2. Your answer would be 5. There are 5 scores on there that are less than 10. You could be asked, what was the most common score? You'd look for the highest one, wouldn't you? The most common score range was 15 to 19. They're the sort of questions you could be asked from a graph like this. I think that's a beautiful graph, and I really feel sad from what I'm about to do to it. So long. But we're going to move into a second example. So bringing it back to the idea, we're doing histograms today, which are column graphs. I'm going to do a second one. I'm going to do a second one because I really want you to think about the scales that you use on your axes, because the scales are often something that people find challenging to get right. You don't do scales that go up in things like sevens. You don't sort of write 7, 14, 21, 28. It really isn't so suited to our brains to interpret. So I want you to think about scales. And we're going to do that via, we had that subject survey that I put up the data for in the last lesson. We're going to do that, but let's pretend we've surveyed the entire school. Amazingly, I don't know how we did that, given we're all offline, but they did. And they got these results. We got maths at 340, English 117, science 258, history 203. So that's a measure of how many people found them their favourite subject. So isn't that impressive? Maths is still where it should be. And the big question I'm going to get to is, first I'm going to draw our axis to start with. We are going to make a histogram. That's the whole point of this. So I've drawn an axis down here. I've drawn an axis over here. Right. Now down the bottom it's fairly predictable. Remember how I said frequency should always be on the y-axis as it's the dependent variable? Well, obviously subject is the independent variable down here. I only need 4 categories down there. You might make on your notebook a category every 3 centimeters, something like that, maybe every 2, every 4, whatever fits. On here it's going to be a bit bigger, but I'll do this axis first because this is the easy axis to do. I only need 4 areas. I might do them every 6 centimeters. 6 centimeters I'm going to do on mine. So 6, 12, 18, 24 gives me 4 evenly spaced out categories. Maths, English, science, and history. The issue is, I'm not going to write 1 up to 340 on this side, am I? I'm not going to sit here and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is what I'm talking about determining a good scale, working out a good number of values to do between each data pointer there. And look, as a general rule, I'm going to say this, work in 1s, 2s or 5s. By 1s, 2s or 5s, I also mean 10s, 20s or 50s. And in turn, 100s, 200s, 500s. I'm sure you can continue the pattern. 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, that sort of thing. All right? The whole idea is use sensible gaps between axis values. In this case, the biggest value is 340. You won't write 340 on the side here. You're going to go up in a constant amount that makes sense, right? 100 might be one of your first picks. You might say 100 because we could do 100, 200, 300, 400. You know what? I'd accept that. This time I'm going to do something slightly different. Now, does anyone want to guess what I might do? All right, I'm leaning towards using 50 because if I count up in 50s, the highest point will be 350, and that's all right. There won't be too many numbers on this side. You don't want too many numbers on here or it looks cluttered and messy, but then again, you don't want too little numbers there either because you want people to get a good feel for where the data actually is. Now, let's admit, in the real world, we'd be using Excel for this. Most of the time in the real life, you are going to use Excel. Sometimes Excel does annoying things too. You'll have that fight later, or you're welcome to do it while you're at home as well. It's a good skill to learn. You'll be doing it in future years. But anyway, I'm going to go up in 50s. The highest one's going to be 350. If I was doing this in your book, maybe a data value every 2 centimeters. Every 1 centimetre might be a bit small. But for me here, I need to put the thing the right way around. That always helps. And I'm going to do every 3 centimetres here because that'll take me up to 21. 18, 21, 24, 27. So again, I'd recommend say every 2 centimetres in your notebook or 1 centimetre if you want to do a really small one. So from there I can put values on it, going up in 50s as planned, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, and yes, I've gone a little bit higher than I needed to, there's 400, but that's okay. If we don't go high enough, it's more of an issue. So from there, we can start putting in our values. So here we go. For mathematics, it's 340. So it's going to be up to here. Oops, I need to do it a little further over. So in terms of where 340 is, admittedly, I approximated there. I didn't take the exact value. I just approximated that's about where 340 will be. It's much closer to 350. Next up, English at 117. It's going to be about there. Maybe very slightly lower now looking at it. Science, 258. So that's only going to be very slightly above the 250 line there. And lastly, history at 203. There we go. And down. All right. Now that would be our graph complete if it wasn't for a very, very small detail, which I told you about last time. My graph isn't complete. It's missing its labels. So down here we have subject. Up here we have frequency. And we are of course missing a title, which is favourite subject or something similar to that will do, with a line underneath to give focus. All right, so that's today, guys. Histograms are column graphs. Make sure, the most challenging thing for a lot of people is making sure you've got the right, make sure you're using your ruler, make sure you're using the same distance between each marker, and make sure you choose a sensible gap between your values when you're drawing it all up. From now, that's it. Please go forth and enjoy your exercises, and if you've got any problems, send them to me. Otherwise, good on you. I've got to call the school back. See ya. Bye.